Justice in Motion, Courtside with Jarod Jones.
Okay, as you know, every Wednesday, this time of the day, we have our conversation with our learned friend, Mr. Jarod Jones, who's the noble attorney. Jarod, how are you doing?
Going well and Sam.
Yeah, no, great. It's almost like a masterclass every week. I'm becoming that horrible guy around the braai, you know, the guy that knows too much now because I'm hanging out with one of my friends is a lawyer and I get to spend every Wednesday with him, and so I've become that annoying braai friend, you know. I've migrated from Sam knows a lot to Sam is just downright annoying now. Okay, what is our mission every week, Jarod?
All right, Sam. So, as usual, every week is to legally empower people with knowledge to enforce their rights and to do the right thing.
And to become that annoying braai guy. What are we doing today? Because today I'm looking forward to this conversation.
All right. So, Sam, today we've got Jacques Peacock in from the NSPCA, who's going to give us a masterclass in itself in animal rights and environmental law.
I love it.
Specifically with regards to various types of animals and that kind of thing.
Jacques, welcome. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning to the listeners as well, and thank you for having us.
I am on your mailing list, so I get to see all the amazing work that the SPCA does, by the way. So in my inbox every week, I get all the latest updates, animals that have been rescued, if there's any work. A lot of the stuff is happening in Bloem. There seems to be a lot of... in quotes, some harsh people in Bloem. You know, saving horses and all that kind of stuff. So I'm on your mailing list. I'm just proud to say, if you're not on the SPCA's mailing list, get on their mailing list. That you can really, on a weekly basis, see the amazing work that the guys do. Okay, my learned friend, what are we talking about today? We're talking about animal rights, but where are we going?
Okay, so the focus we're going to be looking at is animal treatment, basically the different types of remedies available to people in residential and other areas, yes, regarding different types of categories of animals, and obviously delving into the realms of wild animals as well. We're talking about both domestic and exotic animals, in other words, from overseas.
And I know some people have them in their property, but this is not Dubai, you know. So let's Jacques, let's kick off with the basic stuff. When we talk animal rights, what are we really talking about?
I think, you know, the animal rights versus animal welfare discussion is as old as time. Animal rights doesn't exist anywhere in the world, so to speak, because in order to have rights, you need to have what is called in law legal subjectivity. So people are legal subjects. We are able to vote during elections. We are able to take other people to court if they make us unhappy, where animals do not have that sort of status bestowed on them. They are called legal objects, or the more derogatory term in law is they are defined as things, basically. It's property that you are able to have. So it boils down to the two movements. Animal rights movement, it wants animals to have those subjective rights, and within that there are also a few branches. I think there is abolitionists and there are liberation movements in that, and then you get animal welfare, which focuses on the position where South Africa and countries around the world find themselves in, where animals are defined as legal objects, but we look after their welfare and how they are being treated, without necessarily saying that they do or should have subjective rights, like the right to vote, for example.
That would be so funny to watch a dog vote. And I wonder,
they would probably make some good choices.
Probably better than us, Jacques.
All right, so Sam, the next question I have, Jacques, for you is basically South Africa has quite a few landmark cases regarding about, especially with regards to the NSPCA's standing to private prosecutions. And what does this say about how seriously our legal system is taking the protection of animals at this case? Obviously, looking at such things as there's a particular case that I've read that of interest, the so-called lion bone case. If you could just elaborate on that and just
maybe share with us a little bit about the case. I haven't heard of the lion bone case.
Absolutely. I think the crucial landmark case was our constitutional court case against the Minister of Justice, wherein the Constitutional Court gave the NSPCA the right to privately prosecute individuals or entities. So if the state refuses to prosecute, they give you a noli prosequi certificate, and then you can pursue private prosecution. But in that entire judgment, there are so many gems contained in there, because that is where the Constitutional Court recognized animals in South Africa as sentient beings.
I've heard that term before.
Yes, and that is the ability to feel and have subjective experiences as well. Joy, fear, perhaps even anger. And that really cemented how the law is
Recognizes.
and is at least supposed to look at animals and their welfare. And if we look at the Lionbone case, which was a High Court matter against the Minister of then Environmental Affairs, it had to do with the export quota for lion bones. Lion farming is a huge industry in South Africa. It is literally a commercial farming practice with lions in cages where they are bred for their bones. And
they bred for their bones.
Absolutely, yes, because the bones are turned into a product that is used in Chinese traditional medicine. So those bones are being exported in order to make that product, and it is worth a lot of money.
So you would grow a whole lion just to kill it, to take the bones and export it to one or two countries.
And that is the concern, because
That is ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to me.
No, absolutely. But look, I think in this particular one as well, I think Jacques will be able to elaborate on this as well further.
Yeah.
But in the case, it discerns about there were regulations promulgated by the minister regarding those quotas. The problem was there was no consultation with organizations such as the NSPCA regarding the welfare of those animals. There was a distinction between animals in the wild and animals in captivity. And the regulations didn't seem to have much regard for or the uniformity of treatment of animals in the wild versus captivity. It's honestly, from what I've understood, to be quite a concerning practice. Maybe it has a commercial value, so to speak, for animals kept and bred in captivity, but there's got to be a limit, and there's got to be a certain amount of, and I use the word oxymoronically, humanity in this kind of practice.
Absolutely, and that is where the court also found that any decision maker must, and the term used is must, consider animal welfare in their decision making, even if they do not have an animal welfare mandate. So in that case specifically, the minister is compelled to consider animal welfare when setting those quotas, but it also applies to other decision makers whose decisions can affect the welfare of animals.
Wow. Yeah, and it's quite interesting, because if you're not watching these things, you don't realize that those are the kind of fights that are happening behind the scenes, right? So one of the things that I'm very familiar with, because I have these conversations, is how, for example, sheep are transported, for example. There's an organization that I interview every year, and they are all about the transportation of animals, and some of the conditions that these animals are transported under is shocking and horrendous. And they've been able to galvanize kind of the public mindset around thinking about how this livestock is being treated on its way to wherever it's going. So yeah, that's kudos to the work that's being done. Ordinary South Africans, we don't think about these things in real terms. And if you're listening right now, how do you know if what you're seeing is actual animal cruelty under law? And we've all gone through townships and we've seen this awkward sheep on the back of a bakkie. Some chickens, they look like they're cooped up. How do we know if we're seeing animal cruelty?
My best advice is always that if it makes you feel uneasy, give the SPCA a call, because it has one of two outcomes. It's either that it is a genuine concern and the SPCA is able to inspect, investigate and take corrective action, possibly educate that person on the humane treatment of the animals, or if it is not a concern, the SPCA can educate you about why it is not a concern and why it is not in contravention of the law. And even if it is not a contravention of the law, the living conditions and the entire life of that animal can still be improved by other means that does not necessarily involve prosecution, for example.
I know Jarod wants to ask you a question, but I just want to just maybe get a sense of it. What does the law recognize at the moment? If you are found guilty, is that, are we talk what is the punitive damages there? Are you going to end up in jail? What's the worst, what's the kind of minimum versus maximum outcome if you're found in contravention of?
The sentences in terms of the Animals Protection Act, which have been amended, but already quite a few years ago, do involve a fine and or imprisonment. But, you know, I guess also suppose due to the incredible strain that the correctional facilities around the country are facing, we rarely see that people face direct imprisonment. So you might be sentenced to imprisonment or pay a fine. Suspended, usually the most common is for 5 years. So if you contravene again and you are found guilty, then that will kick in. And whether that serves a good deterrent and rehabilitative effect, I'm not sure. You know, it's some call it a slap on the wrist. What is unique of the Animals Protection Act, at least, is that the court can then make a determination that that person, for a specific period of time, is not allowed to own animals. And that is really a protective measure that we push for, even if the person then does not get a harsh sentence.
And what is the worst that you've seen, or the best outcome where the person, what is the most they've received in terms of?
The toughest sentence in terms of direct imprisonment is a case of a dog called Moana. It was extremely distressing. It was a bestiality case. And the sentence there was 8 years direct imprisonment, which is the longest term ever in South Africa's history, and which I think is quite commendable, because it takes you down an entire different rabbit hole of the link between animal cruelty and human violence. It's indisputable that there is a link, you know, and people often start with animals and then move on to their fellow human beings.
Wow.
All right. Jacques, just moving on with that train of thought, from what I understand from the Animal Protections Act, instances of dog fighting or being involved in that kind of racketeering, that imposes usually a more harsher sentence of about 2 years or so. My question is, one...
Direct, right?
What's that?
2 years direct.
Well, or a fine.
Or a fine.
So it's still along the same lines as the first instance of 12 months for ordinary or what one can classify, I suppose, as ordinary. But the question is, in your experience, what happens with these dogfighting situations, and how prolific is it, and what are the major issues that organizations like the NSPCA is actually dealing with at the moment in terms of animal cruelty?
We have an amazing task team called the Special Projects Unit to specifically deal with organized and violent crime against animals, which includes dog fighting. And I think the biggest hurdle at the moment is that it's gone very underground and
I was about to ask that.
Informal, actually. And the scary thing is that you see more and more children partake in those activities. Whether it is similar to hunting with dogs, where adults pay children to do it because they know if they get caught that they aren't treated under the law as the same as adults would be, we don't know. But it is a really big issue, and it's one of the core focuses of the Special Projects Unit. And what they do is they have a list of previous contraveners where they would do routine follow-up random inspections to go and make sure that there aren't any more problems, after the fact. It doesn't just help to step in once and then leave it. So it's a big, focus area. We have our Warriors Against Dogfighting project, which allows people to really get into supporting that specific projects, and they get quarterly reports on the work being done to combat dogfighting specifically. And that ties in with a huge problem at the moment, which is animal cruelty on social media. It has become rampant.
Sorry, when you say, Jacques, just for some of us that are not aware, when you say animal cruelty on social media, is that documentation, video, people abusing animals and then posting it?
So we've identified it into a few categories.
Okay.
You might get someone who receives a video and wants to genuinely express concern by posting it, But then, the algorithm doesn't differentiate. So that thing goes absolutely viral. Then you get people who commit animal cruelty for the purpose of online entertainment. So in this year, we had a guy who fed a fish beer, and the purpose was to entertain. But, those things go absolutely viral. And when it gets to us, our units have to sit and watch those videos over and over and over again to try and get visual clues to track them down, which they do quite successfully. But the mental toll that takes to watch those videos over and over,
I can imagine.
It's quite disturbing, and sensitive listeners might be disturbed by it. But just yesterday, we received a video of someone skinning a cat.
Oh,
how do you watch that over and over and over to try and get clues as to where this person is? It's becoming a huge issue. And to try and take on these giants like Meta to try and regulate these things better is an insurmountable task.
And it's also, I think it's a priority. They might not see it as a priority in comparison to the other issues that they're dealing with online, right?
Absolutely.
But
It's a small drop.
I couldn't imagine sitting through a video like that. I just can't.
No, honestly, just as a
That just
social
sounds
commentary,
offensive.
I think it's greatly disturbing. And I think that's your first indicator as a society, is when the treatment of your animals, if that starts denigrating in a society, that is usually the first, and I'm not an expert on any kind of psychology, but in my opinion, that is your first indicator of the decline of society morally. It's greatly concerning that anyone would even consider this as an idea, never mind and act it out and allow it to go out on public platforms, or anyone. Any platform for that matter.
Can I ask a question? Obviously, you guys are the legal guys. When in a situation like that, obviously that is an obscene sense of violence, right? Is that direct imprisonment?
Well, it should be.
It should be, but the law, depending on the day.
And I guess also on the mitigating factors of the accused person, if you are able to successfully prosecute them, you would definitely in aggravation talk about the level of violence that it took to get there, and the absolute intent to go through with that act. But I guess it depends on the mitigating circumstances put in front of the court as well. And if courts have to weigh up how many people they need to imprison.
I can't even begin to imagine. I would never watch a video like that. Is the incidents or the people that perpetrate this violence, Jacques, just from your understanding and your investigations, are these people mentally ill, or is it just for is it just for shock factor, or is it just because social media has become this horrible place where some of the worst of us live online? What is it?
I think it might be a combination of both.
Okay.
We had a story which went viral, Bobby, which was a very emaciated dog, which was in the background of an influencer's video. Whether she knew that the dog was there, we don't know. Yeah. But the dog made the content go viral because people saw the suffering dog in the corner. So do you then realize that, all right, people are going to look at this dog and that's going to help my content go viral, and you sort of choose that sadistic way, if I can call it that, to sort of enhance yourself. Yes, it is a real possibility, and it really comes down to the fact that it seems to be a complete lack of compassion.
So, just on that one, Jacques, for people in residential areas, if you could just guide the listeners on what to do in certain circumstances. So, example, if you've got your dogs barking and nuisances and things like that, versus things that would fall under animal cruelty, under the Animal Protection Act, what should one do in either one of those situations?
I think it's a very valid question, and something that the SPCA generally gets a lot of flack for. My neighbor's dog is barking or out in the street. Those issues are regulated in terms of each municipality's bylaws. And the real people responsible for enforcing those is the municipality, not the SPCA.
Although you get a lot of calls.
Absolutely. And we still attend to those calls because it could be an animal suffering, or it could be an animal that could be suffering down the road because it's barking because they've been abandoned.
And so what would that look like, Jacques? You would pull up to the property, you would try and gain access to that property, so that would be trying to look over the wall or trying to gain actual access to the property.
In terms of the Animals Protection Act, you sort of have two options in terms of your access. It can either be by consent of the owner, they agree you can come in and do an inspection, or if they refuse consent, then you apply for a warrant in terms of the Animals Protection Act. And that is where it sort of comes in, is educating people that the SPCA and the NSPCA generally is a law enforcement authority. We have policing powers. So
I don't think a lot of people know that, by the way.
I doubt it.
No, seriously, I don't know that people know the SPCA has policing powers.
Absolutely. And it's, so it's so much more than having animals up for adoption, which is a crucial part of what we do. But those inspectors are specialists in their field, and it's their job that they do every single day, and we need to keep them out there in order for them to continue doing their job and enforcing the law.
So, and I just want to kind of drill this home. So if there is a complaint and you rock up and you find levels of abuse, your inspectors have the ability, is that on their own or with the help of police, to arrest the person?
You can, in terms of the Animals Protection Act, the SPCA officer or inspector can arrest.
Okay.
And then,
I think that's very important to know. We've been caught up with this idea the SPCA is only about animal adoption.
No, 100%.
And we don't realize the amount of investigative work that actually happens to uncover. And like I said, join the mailing list, guys. Join the mailing list. There's some really amazing stories. These guys are doing amazing stuff. Yeah, that's very important to know.
Yeah, and I also believe, it's also, it would drill home the point, at least in some aspect, of the responsibility of people in purchasing animals and owning animals.
Yes. You were talking about exotic animals, right?
Precisely. I think what Jacques has hammered home very eloquently here and rather directly is these are sentient beings. This is not such as buying a motor vehicle or property. This is something else, and I think there is a requirement or a need to develop the law further in that regard. I think the case law seems to be going in that direction slowly but surely, but I think there need to be greater interventions to deal with this kind of issue.
One of the questions that I take no responsibility for any of the questions. This is all Jarod. But I wanted to get a sense between, and you alluded to a little bit earlier, between this idea of a right holder versus kind of the welfare model. Just from the work that you guys are doing, I know the SPCA also does a lot of advocacy work. You do a lot of lobbying. Is this idea that an animal, in terms of the welfare model, is that adequate enough, or do we need to move in this country to moving animals to this point where they are rights holders?
It's a very contentious issue in the animal sphere, and there are so many considerations. While studying, I researched and wrote about that. You have to ask if rights usually come with obligations. So, people have the obligation not to murder someone, for example, because the other person has the right to life and the right to bodily integrity, or whatever the case may be. How do you place that obligation on an animal? So there are arguments that you can move it into what is called the sui generis in terms of the law, which is like a grey area. You can perhaps acknowledge that animals have the right to, and if you look at the 5 freedoms, the right to, display their natural behavior.
Okay.
Animals have the right to have adequate feed and shelter. And then you still have welfare protections alongside that, which places the obligations on humans as to how they treat those animals. So it's a whole complicated rabbit hole, but it certainly, everything in that sphere is aimed at better protecting animals, whether you believe they are rights holders or that their welfare should be looked after.
I'm looking at Jacques and I'm thinking we are nowhere near to the end of that, whether animals should have rights or not, or whether the welfare model works.
I think honestly there's going to be a lot more contention on that moving forward. It's going to be an interesting one in terms of our development.
Because certain animals have better rights than other animals, right? It's not an equal playing field across the board. Or is that a silly thing to say?
Well, look, I think it's actually on point. It's actually one of the questions I wanted to loop into the discussion. There's a Gauteng ordinance regarding exotic animals. So there are certain protections that cover indigenous animals and permit holding for those. What I wanted to deal with, Jacques, is regarding loopholes such as Bengal tigers and exotic animals.
Does anybody own a Bengal tiger yet?
Well, not myself, but I've seen instances where private owners actually own these things. Well, this is a thing, and it's actually something that is not specifically covered by the Gauteng ordinance on this issue. So, Jacques, if you did just be able to elaborate on that issue and just the challenges it creates.
You would be very surprised. It's a very real thing in South Africa. Tigers in backyards.
No way, Jacques.
And the problem is because they are an exotic animal, so they aren't covered by our environmental laws that would, for example, cover lions, for which you need permits. They
You
are
mean
exotic.
like my yard, right? My backyard. Tigers
Absolutely.
in our backyard.
If you go and Google, and the listeners are also welcome, there was an instance where a person kept a tiger in the backyard and their neighbor was a creche. And there was huge uproar. And if the regulation is the first problem, how do you cannot possibly try and simulate that animal's natural habitat.
You can't.
In any form of captivity. So it is a huge issue and it's unregulated. That's why we are greatly pushing in terms of regulation, in terms of environmental laws, to include exotic animals, specifically tigers, because the loophole now comes, the tiger bones can also be used for what the lion bones are being used. So because there's a crackdown on the lion bone industry, people are now keeping tigers, which are unregulated. So they only have the Animals Protection Act to protect them, and the quotas for export are non-existent. So they can literally just pump it out of this country at no measure.
Wow. There's definitely a part 2 and a part 3 here. We must invite Jacques back. There's a lot to unpack. We've run out of time. What a fascinating conversation. Please, I urge you, go and follow the NSPCA. They do amazing work. Sign up for the newsletters. Get in the loop. Become part of the family. These men and women are so incredibly brave. They're doing exceptional work on behalf of us ordinary South Africans. So go and check them out. That's Jacques Peacock talking to us about the legalities of animal rights within South Africa. Jarod Jones, thank you very much for putting this together. Where can people get hold of you?
Thank you, Sam. So they can reach us at www.jdjattorneys.co.za.
And definitely we'll do follow-ups. We need to continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be important for us to become animal rights aware. Okay, literally a couple of seconds away from the news.
Field 919. From Sharon Lee to Shekinah, we'll keep you upbeat with Joburg's Feel Good Vibes. Field 919.
Forward, I don't wanna go back, I don't wanna fall before the fight. I can be the hero of the night if you let me